so we can get through it all in an hour or so. Stop the music. So, let me play for you guys real quick what we're going to make today. And if you have opened up the session already, you should see some of these samples. You should recognize the colors. So we're going to basically take the samples that you downloaded in that session. We're going to compose this track from scratch. So, are you guys ready?
Let's do it.
Let's do this shit. So, this shouldn't seem too intimidating. I know this might seem intimidating at first if you've never actually finished a track or you're having trouble finishing tracks. So, my hope is to show you that with a less is more approach, we can kind of complete a track with not too many elements and make this happen. And you can see everything we're using. So let's break this down. We're going to start with the beginner. And we got all our samples, and they should be... I'm going to start by selecting all of them and muting them so we don't blast our faces off. And let's start with something easy. So for drums, I'm going to do something real simple. I'm just going to use one drum loop. And it's just, you know, hi-hat loop with a drum and a snare, kick drum and a snare. And then I gave you a few samples too to play with. That's the fill that I used before. Hey, welcome guys. Are you guys here for beginner?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yes.
We're making a dubstep track from scratch right now. Yeah, watch the camera right there. Yeah, so if you haven't seen the Facebook page, go check out Pro UCSD on Facebook. Yeah, definitely stick around here and help out. Or actually, no, you can go to advanced. I think I got it. Because I'm just walking through this tutorial and like people are either following along or just listening.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. So facebook.com/Pro UCSD if you haven't downloaded the session yet. So I'm going to get back into it here. So the only drums that I gave you for this entire composition are 2 crashes, a drum loop, a kick, and a snare. You can hear all that here. So, and I already like bundled the fill as like a thing for you, so you don't have to like arrange those samples to make that fill sound. So these samples are all just dropped in at the beginning. So to start, we want to start composing out a track. I always start by laying out sections of music, like large sections of music, by using the warp markers here. Welcome, guys. We're doing a dubstep tutorial, so if you check out the Facebook page, download that stuff. You guys don't have computers though, so probably not. So where am I at? So drums, we are good on. We got to start composing this with the markers. So what I'd like to do is set a few markers up. I'm going to start the song at 5. Going to make a 16-bar intro. Actually, I'm grabbing the wrong one here. Let's do 5 to 13. Got 8 bars. That's good. We'll do another marker. I'm going to lay this marker for our build-up section, which is, so we're going to break it 2, build up to 3, and then 3 is our drop, and you can name these if you want. I'm just going to skip that for the sake of time. Drop is 16 bars long. So this is our basic layout for the song. You can see we got like a minute of music here. If you look at the time markers, the timestamp here. So, and I'm a drummer, so I always start with the drums. So I'm going to take this drum loop here, and move the fill way over here for now, just to keep it out of the way. I'm doing these all on the same drum track, the same audio drum track, just for the sake of lessening the amount of tracks I'm working with. But point being here is you don't need a whole bunch of drums to make like a full sounding track. You know. So we have our drum loop. It comes in right at the beginning here, and it's going to drop out during the break, the bridge section, and build up. Thank you. And then we want to bring our drums again back for the drop section. So I didn't do that long enough. I'm going to make this 37. Cool. So duplicate that. I'm using Command D to duplicate. Learn your hotkeys. It helps a lot. Excuse me. And we have our drop drums, our intro drums, you know, break sections. So here we can see, like, we're starting to compose the track globally. Now let's not do these yet. I'm going to move these crashes to a couple key spots. So I usually just do a simple crash on the beginning of each phrase, just to kind of blast off. It's a nice high range noise for dubstep for the start of a phrase. So I'm putting a crash cymbal. They're just a little bit different sounding. They're about the same. I'm putting a crash cymbal at the start of the phrase and not the end, because we're going to do something tricky with the kick drum to make like a sub drop sample for this section here at the break. So now we have our drums composed. That's pretty much all I'm doing for the drums. I'm going to chop these up, take out small sections of drums to make room for other sounds later, but this is the basic layout. Oh, and then the fill. I forgot about that almost. I'm going to zoom in here, copy my fill, and put that along. Activator track. So the crash, couple one-shot samples, and the drum loop. That's made for the genre. What's up, guys? Come on in. Take a seat around this area. Just watch. We're filming through here. All right, so we have our first part down. I'm gonna go into the lead sound. This is a personal preference thing about how we're approaching the track. Yeah, you have a question.
Quick question. What is that before the drum loop?
What do you mean before? On
Right
the track?
before the 21 marker.
So you're saying
Right
here?
there. Yeah.
Oh, so that's the one-shot samples that I gave you to make the fill.
Okay.
So if I copied and pasted those over, but I keep them on the same track just because the track's I'm not doing any processing with this track. The drum samples that I gave you are already mastered and sound really loud and fresh, so you don't need to be doing any processing. And that goes for most samples that you pay for. You just leave them how you got them. do filtering, obviously, to take away the sounds that you don't want to hear. But as far as processing the sounds to make them like louder or pop more, they're usually already pretty beefy. So when I do sample manipulation, it's more of a timbre manipulation, not necessarily a loudness or any kind of volume issue like that. And again, going into that further, that note with the volume, if you check the volume levels, I didn't reset them all here, but they're all basically at 0, except for a couple. The call tracks I turned down to -3. But that just goes to show you can take all these samples. You know, I didn't spend any time mixing this. I just composed this and then brought it in here and just played it for you guys, and it sounded like mixed, right? That's just because the samples are all mastered already. And so when working with samples, I highly recommend, especially starting out, to just use what you got and get creative with 1 or 2 things. So, end of rant. I'm gonna start working on the lead. This is my preference. I like to compose like the melody first in my head. That's kind of what I hear first in a track. So that's just what I'm gonna do first. But some people go with bass, whatever. It just depends. So I have these 2 kind of whiny lead samples. So I'm going to put the first one right here, right before the 1 marker, to give us a little intro.
Challenge. You post it somewhere?
Facebook page. Yeah, it's uploaded. Yeah? Alright, so what I'm going to do here is, and I'm just using copy, cut, and paste here, guys, by the way. Very useful. Get used to using those. I'm pasting these lead lines as a phrase at the end of, a gesture at the end of my phrase. So right before the intro starts, I'm giving it like a pickup note with this. And if I'm solo. And now I'm putting the other one that's an octave lower as the second time around, just to give it some variety, not just do the same thing. Or octave up, sorry. And I'm placing this at the end of the phrase, if you listen. So it's like a response for our intro. You know, the intros usually, and that's another thing too, some people start with the drop. I always start with an intro and melody and build up and kind of just like work from the beginning to end. That's just my preference, but you might prefer to do the drop first. So keep that in mind. Songs come out completely different when you start them in different spots. So this song is very melodic for this reason. Oh, and I need to copy this, so we keep it again. So we have this green one here, twice, right before we, just for our intro, basically. So now we have like a lead to hang on to. I went with the bass line, so let's do that. I have these 2 samples here. So, keeping this easy, I'm just alternating between the 2. Oh, you know what? I didn't do the intro as long as I did for what I played you. So I'm gonna show you a little trick here. So I want to add another 8 bars here for my intro. If you highlight the selected area you want to extend, you can press Command I, and poof, it just jumped everything over to make time for 8 more bars. So that's a very useful hotkey. Remember that one. So now I'm going to duplicate these, get a little call and response going, extend my drum loop, move my crash here. So, a happy accident. Got to teach you guys insert time. Wasn't planning on doing that. So, we have an intro. I'm not going to play that for the sake of time. And one more thing I did with this intro before I moved forward was I played some lines in with my keyboard, my launch pad. These samples, one of the other things to note about downloading sample packs and using those in your songs is that the key is usually displayed on the sample file names. So if you check out, this is in F. Actually, do I have a zoom on? I can't remember. Fuck it. So this is in the key of F, F major. If it's minor, it will have a little M next to it. But major is default to nothing. So I went ahead and set my launchpad to scale mode in the key of F and went ahead and smashed some buttons, and I came up with these two MIDI lines. And if you can take these, they're already looped for you, so you can take them and add them to your intro and extend them out. But they're not going to play anything because they are blank MIDI tracks. So if you let's unmute them, and we're going to load some presets onto this. One of the things I use was one of my go-tos is the Ableton strings, the Ableton built-in strings. They have a lot of presets. So if you go to your instruments folder and you type in strings, you can go to your instrument rack. Although the others have them, the instrument rack is usually going to have your most completed sounding presets. And there's a strings section in here. And I used a couple, so you can preview the sound. And so I used a couple of these presets. However, you may not have these same presets, so that's why I did not copy this over, because this is up to you guys. You can load a couple of your own presets in here and play around with these MIDI files. But keep in mind, I only did these two things for MIDI. I'm not adding a whole lot because I have this sample pack to pull from a lot of sounds from. I'm not really thinking about. The only reason I added this MIDI was to add some high end, because the sample pack that I gave you guys and that I was working with to give you guys had no like synthy stuff for me to like make a kind of like chorusy lead line thing. So anyways, let me load these presets up. I think this one goes here. I use the off-world strings. And now I use the It Happened One Night strings for the lead. And it's going to sound like this. They have a weird thing on them. What's going on, dude?
I'm just looking for my backpack.
Oh. Can't help you there, bud.
Yeah, I thought you had it all.
Oh, string. That's right. I use the cello, I think. Not strings. You type in string, you get a few more presets. And now to do some quick processing on this, just to kind of make this pop. So what I do is, for these synths, I take a filter and I take out the low end, because we don't need to hear that. I don't want it to interfere. Scoop it 200, lower the Q a bit. Now I also want to saturate this a bit, give it some more texture. saturation is a good way to take your MIDI synths and make them not sound as MIDI-esque, make them sound less cheesy sounding, I guess you could say. So let's listen to this now. Without the saturator. So I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell, but it is adding some warmth to it. But it's mainly boosting the volume, of course. And then I'm going to do one last thing that we're going to use later and drop a utility on this. And now, quick processing for the lead line. Just copy paste. I'm going to raise this, filter up because we need even less. It's a lead. And I'm going to saturate it a bit more because it's our lead. Let's hear this. Now you can hear that lead violin. So we have strings laid down, and the sound they sound decent. So I'm going to do so that pretty much completes our intro, I'd say. Let's listen to that together. So now we have a nice. I can turn it up. We can everything together. So that was just repeats. We don't need to keep listening to it. But as far as so that was an audition period. That was me taking a step back to go into listener mode and think, okay, is anything sound off here? Is anything like throwing me off? No? Okay, yeah, it sounds like nice and full and like I'm not being pulled out of the moment by any producer bullshit. It's just, I'm enjoying this right now. Am I enjoying this? Yeah, okay, let's move forward. So we have a break now. Our intro's done. We're moving to the break. I'm gonna just extend this out. Clip it, Command E, another useful hotkey. I'm gonna take this track and I'll do it this way. I'll loop it here, shorten the loop. So now we have, actually I'm gonna shorten it even more. So yeah. Me too. So it just like has that attack every time. Alright. Oh, looks like we're doing a shorter build-up this time too. Alright, I'm going to do another insert silence here because I messed that up. Let's do that. Another Command I for 8 bars. And this one moved the marker, so I'm going to move that back. Drag that back. Alright, now our build-up is proper, like how I showed you from the beginning. We could do it shorter, but just for the sake of matching what we did. So now we have a break. We want it to kind of like for our break we want to keep the energy flowing. This is dubstep, you know, it's aggressive. We got to keep that energy, but we need to break down the noise so we have space to drop the bass again, basically. And that goes into kind of the tension and release of, you know, the classic EDM. I'm sure you guys all know the EDM format by now. So we have a few samples here to pull from. The bells. So we have these 2 samples, and they're already laid out in order to drag and drop. So I'm going to drag and drop those and use Command D to duplicate, paste those out. Now you have this. We also have a stabby sound here, which I already processed for you to be on every bar. Yeah, that's every bar. So we're going to drag that over too, and we're going to extend that to be all the way.
Where are the bells at?
They're on the bells track. So you should have 2 samples on the bells track to drag from the beginning of the session. They're all at the 1.
No, do you know what folder that is, of where you put it?
Are you not using Ableton?
I'm using Ableton.
They should be in the session. Did you open up? Did you start with the session I gave you?
I did not.
Oh, okay.
That's
why.
what's probably make a difference.
Yeah, you can drag and drop if you just take the whole samples folder out of your Ableton session view, or Ableton, if you just go to your Finder and drag and drop the samples folder into Ableton arrangement view, it will drop all those samples in for you. So, here's our breakdown. I did all the work for you as far as choosing what samples go where. But my general rule of thumb for composing with samples was to just take everything in the key of F and just audition them all together and just see what sounds good together. And I came up with this in a few minutes of just trying out a few different samples together out of the Synth folder, whatever they called it. So that's pretty much done here. Now we got to make a build up out of this too. And then one more thing, there was some space I made before the drop, so I put a cut right here. So I'm going to erase that section there to add some space. And now if you heard, right now it's just loops, so we need to add some rising element to this to actually be able to drop our bass. So what I did was I took the same exact bass line and kept it going, which is kind of to keep that energy I was talking about, because it has that 303-esque sound. But you see everything together. It's still very loopy. It's not building. There's nothing building to this right now. So here's where I started to add some automation to really give this the flavor it needs. So what I'm doing here is this is real easy automation trick, taking the auto filter, and I'm just going to audio effects, choosing auto filter and dropping it on my driving track, and that's going to be automated now. We're going to automate. It's already set to a high pass filter, low pass, high cut filter. And we're going to be automating this for the whole song. So if you right click on our button, our frequency slider here, we can see show automation in new lane track. And if you click that, it's going to jump this down here. It's going to add this little, call it a lane here. And it's like a mini track underneath your track that's just controlling your whatever you sent to it. You can automate anything in Ableton actually and send it to a new lane to remember where you're automating. But we're just sticking to this frequency knob right now. So let's take this. It's all and it's set to the top by default. And at the beginning, we don't. So I didn't want to hear the bass at the beginning. Let's truncate that. I'm gonna take. You can to get a perfect automation block, I guess you could say. My bad. To get the perfect automation block that I was going for, I highlighted that section, and in the lane too. You can highlight within the lane itself, and then press Shift and pull that bar. Click and pull that bar down. That's going to get exactly on those grid markers for you. And that's going to be real useful, because if you're trying to eyeball it and you're not really zoomed in, you're going to fuck it up. So, and then if I delete one of that bar breakpoint, it's going to make it a linear bar here. And that's a nice build up. But I don't like linear, so I like to add a little curve. In Ableton 9, they added the curves function. If you hold Option, it brings up the little curve cursor. I don't know if you can see that. Click, pull it down a little bit, gives it some depth, some more than just mechanical rise. There I go with the fucking water again. Glad it was capped. So now we have no bass at the beginning, and it's going to build up. This is our build up riser essentially. something building up to our bass. It's not just loops going into the bass line. And yeah.
How do you do the rise thing? I wasn't paying attention.
Oh, so I'll just go over that one more time. Dude, automation just made me zone out when I first heard about it too, so don't blame me. Reset this. So I highlighted the section that I wanted to automate, and if I'm in grid mode, it's gonna lock me to the grid. And then I hold shift and click and drag the automation bar on that highlighted section. And you see that's gonna make a bar, but it's all the way down. We wanna make it rise. So the easiest way to do that is to just single click on that far breakpoint to delete it. And that's going to make it go into a curve, a linear curve. Do you see that? Did you see me delete it? If you click on it once right here, it turns into a line going upwards. Did you get that?
Say that one more time.
So where are you at?
So I
Did you do the
I
shift
don't know how
drag?
to do that diagonal thing.
Okay, so you're here.
Yeah.
Hover over this breakpoint so it turns yellow,
Okay.
and just click it once.
Oh, I see it.
There you go. And now if I hold Option and I click and drag, it should highlight the bar, the automated bar that we made to be able to make it a curve. And I just add a tiny, tiny bit of curve to a long automation thing like that. That's another kind of general rule of thumb I've found. When you're doing automations, when you're dealing with a larger section of time automation, doing like 16 bars, doing a heavy logarithmic curve usually doesn't sound right for what you want. So I almost always end up using really, really slight curves just to add a little bit of realism, like somebody's controlling a knob almost, rather than doing, because when you do the sharp logarithmic curves, you can see here, we wouldn't be able to hear anything until like the very end of the build-up, and by that time it's like it builds up too fast by the end. So a light curve is good for long periods of time, but when you're doing like some crazy sound for like a fill or something with like a really short, like a bar or less, that's when I tend to go harder with the curve automation if I am doing something along those lines. So, yeah, pretty good. Oh, and then last thing, I lowered the frequency to, what was it, 10K for the intro. So I'm shift and dragging and then checking the breakpoint to see where I'm at. So just to kind of add room for the, I'm kind of cheating and using my automation as an EQ for this section to chop out some of the high end to leave room for those high string pads to cut through. So that another little mixing thing I like to do during the creative process. So yeah, build-up's done, intro's done. I think we're doing well on time now. So we're good to start. Oh, that's right, and we have the vocal. I almost forgot about that. Let's drop our vocal on to the section 2. And it's gonna start right at the beginning. Now I'm gonna do some quick processing to spice this up a little bit. So here's some nice preset tips for you guys for vocals. Ping pong delay, where am I? Mid booster is my first one here. Help the vocals cut through because they're very airy female vocals, and we're dealing with, the bells are very mid-rangey already. I want to boost up those mids to kind of cut, because vocals have to be forefront and center. So let's A-B that. So that, it actually kind of phases it a little bit, but it adds that mid-range that I was looking for, so it works. That's another thing too, trying out presets in the mix can sound completely different than when you're soloing. So,
What was that one called? Out of back?
ping pong delay, mid booster.
Mid booster?
And then the second thing I did after that was simple delay. And I do that one myself because it's so simple. So don't link them. Do the left at 4, the right at 8, because we're doing very square rhythm. There's no triplets in this track. So, and then I'm putting the dry wet at like 40, feedback at 40. So the feedback knob is going to be like the tail, like how many times it delays, like da da da. Or if the feedback is 0, it'll just go once, da da. So that's 0 feedback. So keep that in mind. If you want like a really long tail, you can automate that feedback knob. But dry wet, 40%. If it's 50, for some reason 50% doesn't sound like 50%. I like 40%, but that's a personal touch. So now we hear some stuff happening. And now last thing I like to do is throw a saturator on, just for fuck's sake. Why not? Boost it up 3 decibels. Now for that, I don't know if you heard that build up, so I wanted to make a bit more build to this with the vocal. So that's the first part of the sample. I was being lazy, and I was just like, all right, this works. Let's just do it. I didn't really. You could probably find a way better sample to do this with. So it's a quarter note right here, popping out at that beginning of the vocal. And so the second half of the build is right here. I'm going to paste this part. I'm going to duplicate all the way down. Boom. Now here's the trick to making audio file buildups. You highlight it all, and you use the hotkey Command J. It's going to consolidate it all into a new audio file for you, which you can now do transposition automation on. So let's double click. Boom, we have our audio file. And if I right click, look, it's already here. Envelope. We're going to do an envelope modulation. Actually, it's not automation. This is another kind of hidden feature in Ableton that's very useful in certain situations, such as this audio file pitch bend. So the transposition is going to actually move this knob for you. So that knob is going to permanently transpose the audio file you're working with. However, if we want to do a sweep over that audio file, we can use the modulation, not automation. This is modulation because it's only on this clip. So that's the difference between automation and modulation. They're the same thing. They do the same thing, but modulation only applies to the clip. Automation applies to a track. So ask me later if you need me to clarify that again. I know this is a very advanced thing I'm going into. So I'm going to finish this up real quick. I make a breakpoint at the beginning, make a breakpoint at the end. I'm going to put the end at plus 12, and I'm going to put the beginning at minus 12. So that's all I did for the vocals. Let's make the drop. I might need to borrow somebody's charger, FYI. Messed that up. Alright. I'm good for now. I'll ask you in a minute. Alright. So we have 3 more tracks that I gave you. Call 1, call 2, and response. And so one of the fundamentals of dubstep that I like to teach is the call and response action. So Skrillex made this really popular, of course, with his whole Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, and that whole EP really set the stage for. Oh, thank you. This isn't gonna work though. I need the. I remember I need the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the old one. Yeah, I'll be fine now. I still got a few more minutes. So yeah, this is what kind of what I got from Skrillex when he came out. Kind of set the tone for dubstep, the standard for dubstep composition, and really like having that call and response between your bass lines. So to give it more depth, not just like the old dubstep is before 2010-ish. It was very, very just dry to listen to. It was very loopy, not a lot of build-ups. It is just it's not as entertaining. And when you hit like 2012. There's just this whole wave of new compositions in dubstep and people getting using this call and response technique. But it's really just thinking about like 2 sounds as if they are responding to each other, like talking to each other. Your bass lines are communicating. I guess setting an imaginary stage for your listener. So I start with the call. Try and make that as straightforward as possible. Call and then you respond. So the call 1 is going to have this sample. Lovely. And now, oh, that's right. Okay, so I didn't undo that. In the session I gave you, so the reason I gave you guys the Ableton session is because there's some there's a mastering limiter at the end, and then there's some sends that I have pre-made for you. One's a widener for it just takes, if you send A, it's going to make the sound wide. So look more. Solo that. It's really it's mostly loudness when you're when it comes down to it, but it is adding some width with the utility plugin. So I threw, for the calls, I threw the wideness all the way up, and then I also added some reverb to them, which is send B, and it's just a standard reverb plugin in Ableton with a compressor at the end to kind of beef it up a bit. So and the reverb is to get the tail. So I'm going to leave the reverb off for now. And we want to take this first sample, put it on our drop. So I'm going to copy paste it here. And then that first sample was like, yeah, and then it stops. It's truncated. So this is too long right now still. We want one of those. Yas. Boom. So you hear that starting growl note now that I made. However, it's dry. It's just a sample, so that's why I chose to throw the reverb all the way on it. Whoops. Is to give it a tail afterwards. And now before I start, so now I've chosen, like, I'm good with this sample, right? Now I'm going to start laying out this sample along my composition. So I want to place this everywhere I want it. Before I start adding more to this, I know I want this sample, so let's place it. It's going to be right here. Every 4 bars, I'm going to place it. And then for the last one, I'm going to use I'm going to do the same technique with this other sample that's on the same track. And add some variety. So I'm going to paste this over here. I know I want like a sharp hit, but that's too long. So I'm just going to make this the same size. There you go. There's another sample that's just a little bit different. It took me some time. I played with a couple samples to find this one that particularly matched this one kind of tonally. It's kind of a alternate form of that, I guess you could say. So now we have our main growl, our first growls placed.
Quick question.
Yeah,
I know you're recording it here. Are you screencasting too?
Yeah.
Awesome.
definitely. So let's make our response. Where did I use call to? Oh, that's right. Okay, I'll do that later. So this is already set up. I'm going to take the first Angry Pig sample and place it and turn it on the track so you can hear it. So you notice it starts off right away, but we can't hear that first yeah. We want to hear that, and it's overlapping. So this is the forefront of the call and response technique to make them really pop. Is you have to cut the samples. You either have to automate the volume to take out those chunks of sound for each. You need to give each sample its own space in the song. And if anything's going to overlap, you're going to be like, why is my shit not mixing down right? Why is it too muddy? Why is it blah, blah, blah? You're not going to have that dubstep drop that's popping, So that's how you want to make it pop. If you have things overlapping, it's going to cause you problems. So this goes here.
Where'd you get those samples at?
They're in the folder I gave you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Did you download it's on the pro page?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, okay, so if you open up the session, they're in the samples folder, but that's why I gave you guys a session to start with. All the samples are laid out for you on the beginning of the one. So I'm going to take this sample and copy it one more time for our second section. And now we have another sample here from the Angry Pigs pack. That's just a little bit different. It's just different notes. So, and that one, they were nice enough to leave out the first hit for us. If you notice, there's nothing on, there's a rest on the one. But that's nice. Dope. So there we are. Alright, somebody have a Mac charger for 2011 MacBook. Just need it for a few minutes because we're almost done.
Is it?
Yeah,
Is
that'll
it this
do
one?
it. Yeah. Thank you.
Buddy.
Oh, no. This,
Oh.
I saw it wrong.
Can I go ask,
Mine.
Is it like this?
Can I borrow that one? Dope,
There it
dude.
is.
I would do it. Thank you. Word. Oops. Alright, good to go. So let's finish this off. There's one more sample I gave you guys, which is the call to. Let's turn that on. And it's looped right now, so we only need that section. I'm going to cut it out. And this is, I named it call to, but that's not the greatest name in retrospect. I guess it could be like, I guess it would be better as response to. I don't know, it's hard for me to like think about naming them. I just like write the music, but if you really want to get specific, I guess it'd be response 1 and 2. Anyways, so this sample I use for the end of the sections because we did this Angry Pigs 2 times in a row. I like the sound 2 times in a row, but the second time around it's like you could do something different with it. So I like to take the second one and end it early and put a new sample in. So that's why I chose this sample, and I popped it at the end of the phrase right before the next crash hits. And I made room for it by truncating the Angry Pig sample. So let's listen to that. Dope. So one last thing, at the end of every 4 bars, taking out your drums and giving the listener a break from that kick drum is going to like really like open it up for a second and be like, oh shit, boom, it hits again. So I'm gonna take this, it's on, if I zoom in far enough, I'm on narrow, so I'm gonna take this, truncate it so I just hear that kick. So you hear we have more space for that sample to really cut through. I'm gonna do the same thing here. So now before, I want to do the same thing we did the Angry Pigs 2 twice in a row. And the second time around, I want to truncate it early, do the same thing. So I'll end the kick, or I'll end the drum loop early with the kick sample here. And I'm going to truncate this out so we have room for another sample. However, instead of using the same sample in the interest of tying everything together, I'm going to take this driving sound that we have from the intro and use that. And even better, actually we didn't do, yeah, okay, that's fine. I'm just going to take this first chunk here. I'm going to take, what is it, a bar? So I'm highlighting 1 bar, copy, paste over here. And now we have a second response for the second part of the song. And now so here's what I was talking about with doing a smaller section of time, an automation curve on a smaller section of time is, see this is only a bar, so what will sound really cool is doing the automation curve real fast. So here's our linear curve, I'm going to automate it like this. Actually a little bit less. You get my point. And I'm gonna, so it's a little dry. Let's listen to it. And then, yeah, so I'm gonna add some high end to that. Let's do the same thing with the vocals. We have a build. We want a bar out of the vocal build. So I'll go boom. Let's go back to our automation. So now we're dealing with, as you see the marker here, the flag. I truncated it here. I'm going to take this section of time and I'm going to make a new automation point here. Actually, mess that up. Let's take this point. So make it go crazy for a bar. Yeah, I didn't do that before. That's cool. And so, yeah, that's our drop. If you want to listen to it. All right, before we, because I want to wrap this up. Before we finish this, I want to show you guys one last detail that I forgot to get into. So when I was placing the crash drums, I guess it is a drum, crash cymbals along the composition, I mentioned, oh, we're going to put a bass sub drop here. Well, it's not always easy to find those bass sub drop samples. I don't know if you guys have a pack of those or handy. I like to make my own. So the easiest way to make that is with a kick drum. I take this, I gave you guys a kick sample as part of the fill, so I'm going to take this kick drum sample, and it has a nice, like, beefy low end. We'll copy that, and we're going to paste this. We want this for our break section, so at the break at 2, and at the break at 4. But let's make it first, so I'm going to copy paste it. So, kick, right now, it's not warped, it's just an audio file sitting on the track. So I'm going to warp it so that we can do some time manipulation to it. Ableton doesn't let you do it unless it's warped. But that's okay, because we like the warp. Warp is good. So if we have it warped, we can click this ×2. When you're doing it. And blow it. Oh, it's right here. It's kind of hard to see. There's a divided by 2 and a ×2 function. So if you click ×2, it's going to double the size of the clip. And you can only do that twice before it doesn't allow you to do that anymore. So let's listen to what we just made. Right? So that, we can hear it's like starting to go down, right? But it's not, we want it to be way longer than this. This is too short. So what we can do is use our handy consolidate hotkey. Anybody remember that?
Control J.
Hey, good looks. All right, so now we can warp it again. ×2, ×2. Boom. So there we have our drop sample. However, the beginning of the kick drum is warped out super long, so there's this tinny slap at the beginning. Hate that shit. So let's get rid of that by moving our flag, the beginning flag, to a point where that doesn't, we don't hear it, which is going to be right here. Boom. All right. Now you have a sub drop that's long enough to sound like what you want. And let's copy and paste that to our break. And I'm actually going to make whole nother section. I'm just going to take this part here and copy and paste it over. So you have it. 2 minutes of track in an hour from scratch. Let's listen to it. Oh yeah, one more detail I forgot about. I put these utilities on real quick before, and I forgot to automate them. I was going to do some quick automation with this over time to give the intro some more movement, so you're not just listening to more loops. So long automation curves are going to be helpful for your intros and stuff like that. So I'm going to do that show automation in new lane with my utility gain here. Utility does gain. It's just track controls basically on a plugin. And I'm going to take this, make it all the way down, raise it up so it's a linear curve, and then I'm actually going to go the other way on this guy so it curves up a little bit. Same thing for this guy. New lane, all the way down, make it linear, curve it up. Now let's listen.